This podcast was brought to you in part by our sponsor, Dragonshield. Check out the affiliate link down below to help support the channel.
Well, welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in cEDH. I'm Cam.
I'm Dylan.
And this week, in conclusion of our top combos series we've been doing here over the last couple weeks on the podcast, we are going to be talking about the top 10 one-card win conditions in cEDH.
I'm very excited about this. Now, these cards are not actual, they don't win the games themselves, right? These aren't cards that win the games. These are cards that set up a winning condition.
Correct, yes. So we're looking for one card that sets up the win on its own because your deck is built around it specifically.
Yeah.
These cards can be really poopy if you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But if you
good word, good
yes,
descriptor.
Exactly. But if we build around these cards, we can set up ourselves to be able to be in a winning position after that.
Yeah, these cards are super important. I think it's super crucial if you're playing a cEDH deck, especially in a tournament or something like that, to have one card that can set up a win con. The format is so fast and so explosive, and there's so many different things that can stop you. It's important to be able to just win off of one thing. Now, not all commanders are like that. Some decks don't have access to that, but I feel like a lot of them do. We're going to talk about a ton of the options today, a ton of the commander-specific ones we talked about in our last podcast or the podcast prior?
The last podcast.
The last podcast. So all of those combos, we're not talking about Najeela and Derevi, and we're not talking about Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation. That was from the prior. I mean, we'll bring up Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation.
I pull those images into every single podcast.
Every video ever has those two images. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I'm really excited to get into these because I totally agree. I think these are super important cards to have.
Yeah.
Do you just want to jump right in?
Let's go into it. We're going to make the list as we go, as per usual.
Oh, yes, exactly. We don't know what the top 10 is quite yet. So we're going to start off with the recruiters. Imperial Recruiter and Recruiter of the Guard are the two cards that we're talking about. Now, Imperial Recruiter is clearly the better of the two because there are multiple different combos that this can actually get you. So Imperial Recruiter can go get you Kiki Jiki, and we've talked about Kiki Jiki a lot over the past couple weeks. But when you cast Kiki Jiki, then you can make a copy of the Imperial Recruiter and then use that copy to go get yourself either Felidar Guardian or Village Bell Ringer to be able to combo with your Kiki Jiki.
Right. Yeah, this combo is very mana intensive. 3 mana for the Imperial Recruiter, another 5 mana for the Kiki Jiki, and then you have to tap the Kiki Jiki to make a copy of the Imperial Recruiter to find what's the cheapest one. Deceiver Exarch?
Yeah, but
something like that.
If we want to stay in Naya, we can do Village Bell Ringer. So this is 4 red, 1 white, and 7 colorless total.
Is that 11 mana?
That's anywhere between 11 and 13, depending on the combo piece you're going to get with Kiki Jiki, really.
Yeah.
So
if your reason for playing Godo is it's an 11 mana 1 card combo, you can play this combo in any deck and feel like the same thing.
Plus, Imperial Recruiter and Recruiter of the Guard can also go get Baron Master Wizard, which you can use to bounce the Recruiter to then get Dockside and then be able to go off infinitely that way.
Yeah.
So if you're playing like very specific Dockside combos, you can do that. But Baron's really the only one that allows you to do that.
Yeah, I like this combo a lot. I think it's powerful. The issue, like 11 mana is just like a ton of mana. It's better with Godo because Godo's in the command zone, but it's a lot of mana. You should, if you have Docksides and you have a ton of, Gaia's Cradle type effects or maybe things like that, it can be possible, but this one is just kind of mana intensive, I think.
Yeah, I used this as a win con in Jessica Ishai.
Sure.
And it was my least favorite of my 1-card win cons that were in there. But it is nice because in that deck, you don't run so many tutors. You're in poor tutor colors in general. So it's nice to be able to have extra ways to get creatures.
Yeah, sometimes the Imperials can just find a Dockside, and that's good enough. A 5-mana Dockside will be really helpful. So that's something like maybe one of the strengths of this combo is like adding Imperial Recruiter to your already Kiki Jiki deck. You're going to want to do that anyway. Like if you're already playing Kiki Jiki and something else, Imperial Recruiter is going to be helpful because not only can it find either, it can set up the whole thing or find value somewhere else.
It's gravy is what it is. And I think this will end up being pretty low on our list because of that.
Yeah.
A lot of these 1-card win cons, you go, oh my God, I can play this card and set up for a win that's very powerful really quickly. But this is one of them that's like, oh, well, I'm incidentally playing this win con already,
Right.
so I might as well go and put Imperial Recruiter into my deck.
Yeah, it's not going to be your A line or your B line most of the time. This is going to be your third option for the setup. But that being the case, I still think it's a fine include in a lot of decks.
Yeah. All right, so our next one is Spellseeker. Now, there's actually two ways that Spellseeker can be a one-card win con. The first one is we talked about it in Anala last week, but I'm not including it here because we did that. The other Spellseeker line is another Jessica Ishai line that I ran. And this was using Spellseeker to go get Ephemerate, casting Ephemerate on the Spellseeker to go get yourself Final Fortune, casting Final Fortune, immediately moving to your Final Fortune turn.
So far we're on 6 total mana.
We're on
Spellseeker, Ephemerate, that's 4.
And Final Fortune
is 6. Okay.
So that's blue, white, red, and 2 colorless total, 6 mana. But you do get to untap in this combo, which is pretty interesting. So the Ephemerate, when it comes back off of Rebound, you can use on Spellseeker again to go get yourself Enlightened Tutor, and then use one of the white mana that you had to cast the Enlightened Tutor, go get Underworld Breach.
Still in your upkeep before you draw.
And then that will be your draw for turn. So it goes to find you Underworld Breach. And then if you do have another white available, because you do have the 2 red from being able to cast Final Fortune, you can Ephemerate the
Spellseeker
from your graveyard again, and then go get Brainstorm, and then completely fill up from there.
Brain Freeze, you mean?
Brain Freeze. Brainstorm would be a horrible card to get.
But Brain Freeze works. You have to have that extra mana. But yeah, the rebound from Ephemerate will put it back into the graveyard. So you'll have it there to use with Underworld Breach, as long as you have 3 cards in your graveyard to be able to cast the Ephemerate.
Yeah, and some of these combos we will have to look at how much of a setup there is to them, because not all of them are just, this goes and gets me the 2 pieces I need to immediately win the game. Any one of these that requires Underworld Breach does require a little bit more setup, because you do need to be able to get yourself off the ground once Breach is in play.
Right. Not a ton of setup. Normally, like 6 cards in your yard is honestly enough. If you're above like 9 or 12, then it's like normally pretty easy to go.
Especially if you are just trying to go for Brain Freeze.
Brain Freeze. Yes, you know what it's called, of course. Yeah, I totally agree. This line I think is great. This is very similar to the line that we just talked about. It's kind of the same thing. I don't see Spellseeker as much as I used to see it, but it's also one of those cards that like also finds a ton of other shit. If you needed to find Demonic Consultation or a counter spell or anything like that, it's also a helpful resource. So I like it for the same reason that we like the last combo.
Yeah.
Especially you're playing Underworld Breach. If you're already in that Underworld Breach setup, you're already doing Jeskai stuff. Final Fortune is a pretty good card. It kind of acts as a ritual in a lot of situations. So that's another one that you can use to add a whole bunch of mana basically, or sneak in between somebody else's turn. Since it's an instant, you can sneak in there before you think somebody's going to untap and win and try to win before then. So all the pieces are pretty playable on their own, but it is still 6 mana is really not a ton, but you have to play Ephemerate. I feel like that's the bad part about this combo.
Ephemerate's the only bad card in the combo, but like Ephemerate works really well with Dockside Extortionist and with Imperial Recruiter. So like when you're in this Jeskai shell, this is actually a really slick combo to be able to run. Let's compare it to the Recruiters, because that's where we're at right now, right? It's literally half the amount of mana that you need, because again, you get to untap in the middle of this combo.
Yeah, easy decision.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I think the combo that you're going to get after your 1-card win con resolves is a better thing to do than like the Kiki Jiki, right? Underworld Breach is just more powerful.
Yeah, Underworld Breach only dies to like an enchantment removal, or I guess maybe counter spells sometimes, but oftentimes you'll be able to, with Underworld Breach, flash back your own counter spells and use them over and over again or something like that. And the Kiki combo dies to creature removal. It kind of depends on what you expect out of your opponents. Sometimes you might not really expect any creature removal out of your opponents, and maybe the Kiki line would be a little bit better. But I still think overall Underworld Breach is just like more difficult to interact with. I think it's just a stronger line.
So Spellseeker with the Recruiters,
I think so.
Our next card is up there.
I think honestly this line gets a lot better if there is a Jeskai commander that has a good ETB that Ephemerate is like actually good with. Because if Ephemerate becomes good with your commander, I think this line overall just gets better, because that's the weak link, I think, is Ephemerate sucks.
Because that is the problem. But there are no Jeskai commanders that do that right now.
I don't think so. I'm not aware of any Jeskai commanders off the top of my head that are cEDH viable and that have a good ETB. Maybe there's one that I'm not thinking because I wasn't thinking of Ephemerate. Maybe you can put it on screen if you look that up or something.
If I think of something,
But
I don't know what I'm going to think of.
That might make this line really good. If it, it would make it better, I think.
The next 1-card win con we're going to talk about is Doomsday. Oh my God. I don't even know where to fucking begin with
I like this one.
Doomsday. So Doomsday is 3 black, and you get to put 5 cards in your library. Any 5 cards that you want that, and then remove them.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Let me start over.
Let's start that over.
So Doomsday basically lets you go through your graveyard and your deck and take out 5 cards, and now that's your deck.
Yeah.
And it exiles the rest of them.
Yeah, all you normally need is a way to crack the pile, something that your commander can, it's some way to draw a card. There are, well, I don't know what lines you have written down for Doomsday, but there are like a ton of different ways to win the game.
So I just pulled up the Commander spellbook because there's so many ways. If you have Bolus's Citadel in play, all you need is Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah.
And so many of these just involve Thassa's Oracles.
Yep.
There's a lot of them that will involve cards like Gitaxian Probe and Gush, so that you can get through the top couple cards of your library. Deep Analysis is a card that I saw in some like Esper Farm decks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can use like Timna, your commander, Tevesh, your commander,
Yuriko, your commander?
Yuriko, your commander, Sidisi, your commander, right? Like, there's actually a lot of commanders that can get through the top of your library really well after you've Doomsdayed to be able to just put Thassa's Oracle into play.
When I was playing Rograk Tevishsat, I would play Doomsday, and the line required an extra 3 mana, but once you crack the pile, you cast Jeska's Will. Jeska's Will gives you a bunch of red mana and allows you to exile the rest 3 cards of your library, and with those cards, you set up the Dual Caster Mage Twin Flame combo and just win that way. Doomsday is cool because you can kind of you can win however you want,
however you want.
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like there's 1,000 different ways to do it. Thassa's Oracle is a great one because Doomsday in tutoring for these cards gets rid of most of your library also, so it kind of sets up that combo. But you can really have it set up anything. This one is like a classic Magic combo to me. Like this is like the when I read about Doomsday, that was when I really started getting more into Magic. I wasn't playing when Doomsday was out, but like looking back at when Doomsday and like all the piles, I think it's such a cool aspect of Magic. I think in recent times it doesn't see quite as much play in CDH, but just because I think people are like afraid of Opposition Agent and are afraid of getting blown out. You can kind of get blown out with this card, but the power level is really high.
It is really high, yeah. But it does feel bad if you do get blown out, because there are a lot of ways that you can, and it is pretty much impossible to come back from if you do end up, especially like if you're in colors like Grenzo,
right?
Like you don't have like a ton of great ways to back yourself up too. So
yeah, if you're not in blue, it becomes a little bit trickier.
Yeah, it's like this super duper all in strategy, which I think
you just don't need a lot of the time. Like it's safer to just like not go all in and do some other combo that doesn't, like if you do get stopped, like that's just gonna happen in CDH all the time. And it's kind of, I think it's like best to just plan for that. Just like assume you'll get stopped and play a deck that can just try again, that is resilient. The fragility is just, it's not great.
And the more interaction that they print, the worse it's going to get too. Like Opposition Agent, like you mentioned, was certainly a huge hit to this too. I think the complexity of this combo also prevents it from seeing a lot more play too.
That's definitely true. It's hard. Yeah, it is tricky.
Any card that has like books and papers written on it is certainly intimidating. So
there's a lot of different options. You would think that, you just have 5 cards, you get that 5 card pile, but Magic just doesn't play out like that. There's a ton of times where you'll have some of the cards in your hand, some of the cards got exiled, the combo won't work because something else isn't playing, you have to do something different. Those come up all the time, and then when your choices are every card in your deck but 5 of them, the decisions trees are like insane. It's
and
difficult.
then you're sitting in a tournament and then the pressure's getting to you and you completely flub. So where do you have this versus like Spellseeker and the Recruiters?
It's definitely better than the Recruiters, I think, but I don't know about Spellseeker. See, the other one thing that I was going to say, this combo sees a little bit more play in Legacy, I think, especially recently since Thorclass played. I'm not sure if that's
Big
true. Someone
vintage
corrected
combo
me
too,
if that's true. But that is, I think, like Dark Ritual, you can play like 4 of them in your 60 card deck. Not having as many ways to turbo out the Doomsday, like we do have fast mana, but not quite as many as other formats. I think that's what halts it. As far as better than the Spellseeker line, that's tricky. I don't know.
I'm on that it's better than the Spellseeker line because there's something else I want to consider during this list, and that's flexibility.
Yep.
Spellseeker, you can play in Grixis and you can play in Jeskai, and
you have to play in Jeskai.
Those colors up, right? Yeah, so Jeskai up or Inala is what you're doing with Spellseeker. So, and we're not even including Inala. I don't know why I keep bringing up Inala.
It's part of Spellseeker.
It is, but we talked about it in the last video,
okay.
so I want to avoid it. So really, we're in Jeskai and up colors with this, whereas like Crick, That's its name. Crick also has lines with Doomsday that you can go for and win 100%. The game.
Doomsday can play in mono black. It can play in any color that includes black. That's all that it needs is just access to black.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes it's setting up your combo. So it's not like the Doomsday line is always like you have to play a specific amount of bad cards. Like Gush is probably the worst card that you would have to play. Not that saying Gush is bad, but you just normally wouldn't play it specifically in cEDH.
Especially in like an ad nauseam deck.
If you're in an ad nauseam deck, exactly. Although
you don't need Gush anymore, though.
Yeah, you're probably right. But yeah, I still think Doomsday is just, I think I agree with you that Doomsday is stronger because of the flexibility.
It's stronger, yeah. All right, so we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the polymorph effects.
Okay.
So this is Polymorph, Proteus Staff, Transmorgify, Luca. I had like a little thing in my throat there for a second.
Sorry.
There's more, but
so this effect is basically destroying something, a creature, normally your commander, a cheap one, or your commander that makes a token or something, and you don't play any other creatures in your deck. So the polymorph goes through your whole deck and finds the one creature, that is going to win you the game,
which is the Hullbreaker Horror or Tidespout Tyrant, in particular.
Now, with those combos, the way that you win the game is you normally have to cast a series of mana producing rocks that produce a positive amount of mana back and forth. So you cast one to bounce the other, tap it for mana, back and forth. And you can do this forever to make infinite colorless mana or infinite mana of a color if you have certain types of rocks. It allows you to generate infinite storm, but it still doesn't win the game there. So you have to do the polymorph thing. You have to get your Tidespout in play. You have to do this rock situation where you cast Mana Crypt and Soul Ring back and forth, tapping, bouncing them back and forth to make infinite something. And then you also have to have a commander that you can either activate something like a Thrasios or something like an Urza, so that you can go through your whole deck and then win the game that way.
Yes. So
lots of stuff.
It's a lot of steps.
Lots of steps, lots of things, lots of places to be interacted with.
But it all comes off of your commander and polymorph.
Right. So a good one for this is Urza. Urza makes a construct token. You can polymorph away the construct token to get your Tidespout in play. And because of Urza, all of your artifacts create mana. So this combo is pretty easy. You still have to do something else to start it. So you have to polymorph and you still have to cast another spell afterwards, but it's still pretty easy to go from there. There's also can Z play in like Rograk Thrasios, where your Rograk is like your easy creature to get rid of, and then your Thrasios can use the infinite mana. That one's a pretty good one. I like that a lot.
I've also seen it in Rograk Tevish when you can use the Rograk to go get like big Staxy creatures like that Eldrazi that Tyler plays in Kinnan.
Oh, the Void Winnower.
Yeah, right.
I know. I think Rebel had a list a long time ago that put like Sire of Insanity and Turgid into play off of the one that gets 2.
Well, that's the next one on the list.
Okay, what's that one called?
We'll talk about it next.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Well, just talk about it now.
Okay, yeah, sure. We'll talk about it now. It's Divergent Transformation.
Yeah. Divergent Transformation. Okay.
Yeah, that one's separate because it does a completely different thing and gets completely different combos.
Polymorph.
But yeah, so Polymorph.
Where do you rate Polymorph here?
So I have Polymorph above the Spellseeker line.
Okay.
Do I? I have it above the Recruiters. Now I'm not sure if it's above the Spellseeker line because the Spellseeker line makes you run one bad card in your deck.
Yep.
But the Hullbreaker Horror lines.
It forces you to play Hullbreaker Horror, which is a good card.
I'm sorry. What I meant to say is the Polymorph line prevents you from playing good cards in your deck.
That's also true.
Because I was looking at a lot of Shorikai lists, and there's a big tear between Shorikai where there's a lot of decks that do play Polymorph and a lot of decks that don't. I totally get why you would want to play Polymorph. Your commander works out in the command zone with it, but like you lose out on Dranith Magistrate,
Ranger Captain of Eos,
and Esper Sentinel, and like Gilded Drake and Phantasmal Image.
The power of white that's been printing recently, you lose out on a lot of that. I was playing a Polysceptor Shorikai version just recently. I switched my list over to get rid of the Polymorph and instead put the creatures in because I really just do think that I would much rather have just more cards that do shit than a combo line that really can be interacted with pretty easily, and you can just set up like a different combo because you have better cards in your deck, so you can get to a winning position easier.
And Thrasios Rog, like you lose out on all of the mana dorks.
You lose out on Dockside.
You lose out on Dockside.
Playing red and without Dockside, that's hard for me to do. And a lot of these decks play red.
Yeah, okay. So because it seems powerful, it's very cheap, and you can win the game off of it, but you have to do a lot of very silly things to get there.
Honestly, I
still have it above the Recruiters.
Yeah.
Because I'm building a deck around it rather than incidentally throwing it in because it works works with my deck, but I don't have it better than Spellseeker because
I think I'm with you.
because you have to fuck up your whole deck.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is. Yeah, it's exactly there. It's
Great.
second to last out of the ones we talked about.
I'm gonna say now, what about like Divergent Transformation versus Polymorph? Because I think I have Polymorph over Divergent Transformation.
I think so too. Divergent is the only thing that does what Divergent does. It's the only one that gets 2. Polymorph has a bunch of different things, like the artifact that I can't remember the name of right now.
The Proteus Staff.
Yeah.
Which is like a reusable one too.
Exactly. And then Luca. So like Polymorph has like other cards that do what Polymorph does. And since Divergent doesn't, it's just more difficult to find. It's the only thing.
And it makes Divergent also makes you play like the Leveler and like these combos. Like you're usually getting rid of like Kaikar and the spirit that it makes for the Leveler and Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah, I don't love that.
No.
I don't think I love that. No, I just think it's better to play the new creatures that they're printing. They're obviously printing. Wizards of the Coast is printing powerful creatures. To not play them on purpose to get your combo off, there's just better one-card combos, honestly. I just think there's like better ways to win the game than sacrificing all of the strength of new printed cards because the new cards are really pushed.
And you know what? Because of that, that's only going to end up making Imperial Recruiter even better. So I now have Divergent Transformation as our worst combo.
Me too.
Now, does that change how you feel about Polymorph in the Recruiter, though?
No, I still feel they're about the same.
Oh.
Where I left them before. I still think Recruiter is still a little bit worse, only because it's so much mana. I've never actually gotten that combo off. I don't think I've ever gotten that line off.
I haven't done that in one turn, but I've set it
over time. Yeah, I guess. But yeah, so I still think it's fine where it is, and I think Polymorph is better than that. But with every new set that comes out, I think Polymorph gets worse and worse.
Yeah, I agree. You and I were same page so far. Great. Next one, Hermit Druid. This is great. This is 2 mana for a creature that you can pay 1 more green mana into to tap it and mill your whole library because you didn't put basics in your deck.
Right. This can normally get something like it'll mill over a Narcomoeba, it'll mill over a Bloodghast maybe, it'll mill over something else, some other way to get like an extra couple creatures into your graveyard.
Or your commander has a way to make an extra creature like Urza, like cEDH.
Something like that.
Ooh, not Urza.
Not Urza. That one worked there. cEDH would work. And then you flashback Dread Return, sacrificing the 3 creatures, and reanimate a Thassa's Oracle, and there's no cards left in your library. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
Awesome.
This card just also works with Thassa's Oracle.
It's nice that, like you said, this also combos with Thassa's Oracle. If you cast Thassa's Oracle and then activate Hermit Druid, you got no library. Thassa's Oracle wins you the game. Really good in a rule of law world. Really good in a world where everyone's playing negate effects and all you're doing is casting a creature and activating ability. Hermit Druid was once like, I don't want to say like the boogeyman of cEDH, but in my opinion, it was like the first deck that most people heard of years ago of like, this deck is a cEDH deck.
Well,
or this is like the best deck.
You were right. I mean, it was incredibly fast and really efficient too. Just one card.
You mulligan until you can find Hermit Druid, activate it very quickly. Turn 1 or turn 2 Hermit Druid. There are cards that you can give it haste, something like a Lightning Greaves, something like a Kenrith's red activation if you have your Kenrith out in time somehow. I don't know. Those things can set it up easier. There's Postmortem Lunge, which will reanimate the Hermit Druid and give it haste for a pretty low amount of mana. I think just 2 life. I think you just pay 2 life, and I think you have to pay
it's
the Phyrexian mana and then
black
the mana
and
for it.
X.
So it would be 2 mana and 2 life to reanimate the Hermit Druid,
and then an extra mana to activate the Hermit Druid. There's a lot of cards that work very well with it, especially because the big downside is that you do have to tap it. You have to go around the whole turn if you're not post-mortem lunging it.
Not only that, you have to play a couple bad cards. Narcomoeba is not a good card.
Narcomoeba is probably the worst offender that we've talked about so far. That fucks up your deck.
Yeah. Bloodghast is pretty bad. What's the other one? The blue untapper? I should know this. Fate Stitcher.
Oh, Fate Stitcher.
Fate Stitcher is normally part of this combo as well. Fate Stitcher is also not good. Fate Stitcher can do good things, but on rate, it's not good.
No.
Not good.
But you do what you have to do when you're trying to win the game with a 1-card win con like this. So where do you have this amongst our other cards
This one's tricky. This one can be extremely good as like a meta buster if you are in a world of rule of laws, if you're in a world of negate type effects. I don't mean negate, I mean things that counter non-creature spells. If that's what your metagame looks like, this combo is fucking crazy. It's the best out of all of these. But if your meta is lots of of stacks, if it's lots of removal, if it's really interactive, maybe not so much. You know what I mean? This one, a lot of times you do have to get the Hermit Druid in play and wait a whole turn, and then you have to reanimate it, and you have to wait another whole turn or something like that. That wait is bad. That wait is definitely holds against it. But I still think, because of how cheap it is, it's a 2-mana creature and a 1-mana activation. I still think it's really powerful. So I put it near the top. I think. Is it better than Doomsday? I think it's better than Doomsday. I think it's better than Doomsday.
You know what? I think
it's better than Doomsday.
It's a huge blowout card the same way that Doomsday is.
That's true.
But it's a lot faster and a lot more efficient than Doomsday.
Also true.
And you don't get blown out to all of the same things that you do with Doomsday. Like, you don't have to worry about opposition agent.
Right.
And nobody plays Rest in Peace.
Yeah. I think the issue with Doomsday in our format is it needs setup most of the time. You need to get your commander out first. You need to get your way to crack the pile out first. Otherwise, you're just casting a Doomsday and passing the turn. Now, the same can be said about Hermit Druid, but casting Hermit Druid and passing a turn and they kill it, okay, there's a 1-for-1 for them. Your other 2 opponents are up a card technically. You don't lose much. You just lost a Hermit Druid and that's it. If you Doomsday and someone does something that fucks you up, all your library's gone. You have no way to come back from it.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
So yeah, Doomsday definitely has a lower floor and maybe like also lower ceiling because it costs more mana technically. So I put Hermit Druid higher.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I would do that too. I think I would do that too. There's more bad cards you have to play, but sometimes you only have to play one bad card in Narcomoeba.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the more bad cards does play into it, but I still think it's better.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. So our next one is very similar. It's Divining Witch.
Ooh.
This one is another very old card that does a very similar thing, but instead of milling your whole deck, it's basically Demonic Consultation stapled onto a creature.
Right.
So it's a 2-mana 1/1, and when you pay 1 and a black, you can tap it to name a card and Demonic Consultation.
You also have to discard a card from your hand.
Ooh, that's true. So it turns a card in your hand into a 2-mana Demonic Consultation.
Basically, yes.
Yes.
This one, the way that you win is you cast it and then you pass your turn. Then it comes back to you. You say, do something? No. You pass again. Then on the last person's end step, before you untap, you activate it and find Thassa's Oracle. Find Thassa's Oracle, untap, so we're like the third turn from there. Cast the Thassa's Oracle on your turn, and then exile the rest with the activation from the Witch. Slow.
So we talked about 2 turns.
It's a lot.
2 turns this has to go around.
Yeah, I'm also playing this card in my Kess list. That is my personal Grixis list because I think it's really, really good.
Well, I totally agree. Like,
So-
that's why we're talking about it,
Right.
because it's really, really good. Even though it does take so much time, it's still only 6 mana to piece together, really.
Right.
It's 8. I'm sorry, because casting the Divining Witch, it activated twice, and Thassa's Oracle.
Right, but over the course of many turns, you only really need like 4 mana at one time. You know what I mean? You don't need all the 8 mana at once, which is a big difference.
And where this comes up is in the super stacked out boards.
Yep.
This is not like replacing like any of your
Absolutely
other
not.
ways to combo with
This is how
Oracle,
you
but-
win Rule of Law. This is how, instead of putting enchantment removal in your Grixis deck, which is going to be bad cards, you instead put not you can do whatever the fuck you want. I have decided to instead put something like this in my deck so that I don't have to worry about the Rule of Law. I don't want to have to kill your shit. I want to ignore your shit. That's, I think, the best way to win games in cEDH. I don't want to put in better removal for the things that stop me, because what if I don't draw that removal, then I have to tutor for that removal? What if the thing that stops me is something that prevents tutors? That's just not good. Instead, I would rather win the game, because this way, if I fail, only I am stopped. But if I get rid of the Rule of Law and I try to win and I can't, the next person is going to win the game, right?
Yeah.
So this kind of is protection. You can then use the Rule of Law to your advantage. If someone casts a bunch of spells on their turn, you can utilize this to, help you win at interesting times. So although the card itself takes a long time to set up, I think its flexibility and its strength in specific metas is very powerful.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Now, where do we have this on the list then?
Because I think this is worse than Hermit Druid, but better than Doomsday.
You think this is worse than Druid, but better than Doomsday?
I think
just
so.
like generally, or?
Well, so I think it's worse than Hermit Druid because just on rate, it's a worse combo. But the plus side is it itself is the only dead card, and it itself is not a dead card. Maybe is it better than Hermit Druid?
I have this lower than Spellseeker, but above Polymorph is where I would put this.
Interesting. So you have
So this takes a ton of time. This takes a ton of time, and a lot of times it's not really what you are looking to do.
Yeah. To be honest, I like this card more as just a demonic consultation on a stick than an actual combo spell. I want to cast my Thassa's Oracle and then activate this. That's how I want the Thoracle already to be in my hands.
That's exactly why I like this too, because it still lets you cast Thoracle as your spell for turn.
Through the Rule of Laws.
That's why I like it there, but at the same time, this is still one of the final cards that I'm putting into my deck. Like, there's so many other things that take priority, and sometimes, like, I have, depending on my deck, I have many ways that I can deal with Rule of Laws and then immediately win the game.
Yeah.
And I might not need it as much.
I like it specifically in Grixis, where enchantment removal is for the pits. The only enchantment removal we have is temporary bounce or one of those new bad black cards that's 2 mana and is not very good.
So if we want to split the difference, we can go Hermit Druid, Doomsday, Divining Witch, Spellseeker.
I think that feels appropriate. I really am sure that it's better than Spellseeker. As a combo line, I would say it's actually worse than Spellseeker. As a card, I would rather have that card than the Spellseeker.
You'd rather have a Divining Witch than a Spellseeker. A Spellseeker can get you a Demonic Consultation. Did you know that?
That is true.
Because that does effectively the same thing.
So maybe it's worse than Spellseeker.
It does a different thing than what Spellseeker does. I think that's the important distinction.
I'm going to say I am biased because I'm playing Grixis right now and not Jeskai. So I'm looking at it through my lens. So I do actually now, from what you said, I think it's worse than Spellseeker, which is what you initially said. Let's put it there. Yeah, the Spellseeker is really strong.
I don't want you to feel like you're wrong for playing it in Grixis, though, either.
No.
Like Orin Kess, because I love it in those shells.
I think it's better than Spellseeker in Grixis. But just like from looking at them right next to each other, technically the Spellseeker line, it's more mana efficient, it's quicker, it's just more mana efficient and quicker. Quicker is the thing.
Quicker is best,
This line, it takes way too long. It's 3 turns to do the whole line.
No, way too much. Okay, let's move on. Our next one is Defense of the Heart. We're going to get into the mono green section of the podcast here.
Oh, great. My most comfortable part in cEDH.
Well, we're not really getting into mono green as much here, but Defense of the Heart basically just goes and gets 2 creatures. It's a 4-mana spell, and it goes and gets 2 creatures, and those 2 creatures can be any 2 creatures that combo together.
As long as you have an opponent that controls 3 or more creatures, and you can make it to your upkeep, correct?
At the beginning of your upkeep. So this is basically like untapping.
Yep.
If an opponent controls 3 or more creatures, you get to sacrifice it to put 2 creatures into play.
The only time that I have used the spell is in Yasharn, and I was finding those 2 angels that flip into the big angel.
Hilarious. Brucella.
That's the one.
Love
and then
that.
Your opponents can't cast non-creatures. In a stack shell like that, I think it's really cool.
This works in like mono green decks that are looking to put together specific creature combos with like Kurian Ranger and
a Shy, some other stuff.
Exactly.
Some other shit. Who knows?
You can go get Dockside and Temur Sabertooth, right? You can go get any Dockside combo for that matter.
Any 2 creature card combo.
Yeah.
This line is 4 mana, which is a good rate, but it takes a turn, which is a bad rate. I think.
And it also requires your opponent to have something.
That's true. It's best in stack strategies, right? Because you're waiting to get to the end game. It's not, you can't like jam it on turn 1 and like win on turn 2. That's not how it'll work. You have to win like in the late game with it. So it's only for stacks decks. And I think stacks decks are not great right now.
No, I don't think so either. I think green mid-range has protrubed where Stacks is.
A true word.
That's what it means, right? Protrubed.
Protrubed, definitely.
Green mid-range has protrubed Stacks decks.
I think this card's not good. I think the waiting aspect of it is not good, and by itself, it doesn't do anything else. So,
and if you play it too early and your opponents don't have anything in play, they won't get anything.
It's similar to Divining Witch in that you have to wait. Divining Witch, you have to wait longer, but Divining Witch on itself does something, whereas this does not. This only does that one thing. I think it's worse than Divining Wish. I think it is...
Polymorphs are under Divining Witch. Where do you
I think it's worse than Polymorphs.
I would agree.
That's a meta thing. This is a meta thing at this point, but I think it's... Yeah, I think it's worse than Polymorphs.
I think so too, because a lot of the decks that are playing this are also... No, I always... Never mind. I was going to say something that was totally wrong. Polymorph is still something that you get to control versus like your opponents being able to go like, I'm just not going to run out like an extra mana dork because I don't want you to win.
You basically have to wait until your opponent already has 3 creatures in play to get this in play, which is why it's so slow, which is why it's so bad. I think it's worse the Imperial Recruiter line. What's under that?
Divergent Transformation.
It's better than that
I
one.
think it's better.
It's better than Divergent Transformation.
Because, like, this line doesn't require you to play any bad cards. Like, you're already playing these cards that you're going to get.
Yeah.
It's just the setup.
It's the setup for your finisher, which is kind of what a lot of these cards are. A lot of these cards that we talked about so far, most of them, like, the Spellseeker line has the ephemerate, so it adds in, like, a shit card. This one doesn't, but even still.
All of these ways that we've talked about can win the game in that same turn if you have enough mana.
Yeah, that's important.
Or, like, something else that gives, like,
Final
a creature
Fortune.
haste or something, right? But Defense of the Heart on its own, like, can't do that.
Yeah.
So the next one we're going to talk about is Shared Summonings, which is very similar to Defense of the Heart, except the creatures go into your hand. It's one more green mana, but it is an instant.
Yeah, so this is oftentimes considered like the green ad nauseum because it gets you everything you need to win the game. One big issue is, we'll talk about ad nauseum more obviously, but ad nauseum also gets you ways to protect your combo, and this just gets you the combo, just the combo. It's mana intensive, 5 mana to then also have to play those creatures. That's just kind of a lot. You're gonna kind of have to normally have like upwards of 10 mana. You can do it on the end step or whatever and untap. It's a solid card if you want to play it. I feel like a lot of times the green decks that are setting up wins with 2 creatures are normally playing maybe Thalia effects or things that would not really want them to play this card.
Again, this is like a more mono green kind of thing when you aren't hurting yourself that way. But I have this above Defense of the Heart, but still underneath the Recruiters.
I think that sounds right. We don't need to talk about it much more than that because it's basically the same thing. But
it's very limiting, and by the time you branch out into other colors, you have better ways to get wins, and I think that's where this starts to fall then.
Yeah, exactly. Once you're in black, you get better tutors. Once you're in red, exactly. Same thing.
So our next one's going to be Final Parting then.
Okay.
So Final Parting is 2 black and 3 colorless to get a spell into your hand, a reanimation spell into your hand, and then either like World Gorger Dragon or Razaketh into your graveyard to set up a win.
Yeah.
With either infinite mana or great tutors after that.
Do you know, is it get a card into your hand, put a card into the graveyard, or is it specific, like a creature in the yard, non-creature? I think it's just a card, right?
I'm pretty sure it's just whatever. Search your library for 2 cards.
One in the hand, one in the bush.
And one in the graveyard, then shuffle. Yeah.
This card is also great. It being 5 mana, it stinks when you're playing ad nauseum, which a lot of the times you are. But this is like a great Reanimator deck, I think. Like it obviously it gets you everything that you need. Normally it's like a 6 mana total combo because you get this and a Reanimate, or if you need to like animate to a World Gorger Dragon, it's 7 mana. That's like in the world of playability.
It's a lot cheaper than some of the other combos that we've talked about.
Yeah, I think more often than not, you would play Ad Nauseam instead of this card because Ad Nauseam can more than likely set up the same thing, but maybe also give you protection, which is why this one doesn't see quite as much play. If true Reanimator was like a viable strategy in cEDH, which I don't really count Razakats as like a true Reanimator strategy. Like if there were a deck that has like 10 fat creatures in there and is like truly trying to reanimate several things and trying to crush you that way, this card would get a lot better. But I think just other stuff stops it. Other better cards stop it a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, for a card that does set you up for the win, like you would just rather play Ad Nauseum.
Right, yeah.
Really.
And like like you said, the main things that you're getting are Animate to World Gorger Dragon, which you probably would play this if you're playing that combo, but the issue is that combo sucks. Or you could set up Razaketh, but the issue with Razaketh is oftentimes Razaketh needs like other creatures in play too, so this doesn't straight win you the game with getting Razaketh and a reanimation spell. So instead of casting this, you would rather be like setting up until you can get the Razaketh in play and do it some other way. I would normally, that's how I kind of look at it.
So this is going to end up being a little bit lower on the list for that reason then too. Yeah, so I actually would have this underneath both of the green tutors that we just talked about because again, like this is just one of these cards that there's just something better to be doing already. Yeah. Even by the time this card was printed, it's not like they came out with Ad Nauseum after this.
Right, yeah.
You know, there was just already something better that you could do. And even in the Reanimator decks or the faux Reanimator decks that are just trying to get Razaketh into play, you would still rather play a card that can get you protection and get you a bunch of other key pieces instead of just setting up this one thing.
This is a sorcery too, right?
It is a sorcery.
To the bottom.
To the bottom.
To the bottom of the list.
So even under Divergent Transformation?
That one's a sorcery too, and that one costs more mana, so I guess this is better than that.
No, Divergent Transformation, if everyone else is still alive, is 3 in a red.
3 in a red.
Total
okay.
4.
Yep, it's worse then. I would say it's worse.
Suck it, Final Party.
Down at the bottom.
Down at the bottom you go. Well, our next one is Razaketh.
This one's pretty good.
We're just gonna, fire immediately into this.
Yeah.
So like you said, Razaketh does require a bunch of other creatures. But basically, once you get Razaketh into play, you can set up scenarios where you're sacrificing the creatures that you have in play to be able to get yourself cards like Auriok Salvagers and Lion's Eye Diamond. LED in particular is a very important card in the Razaketh decks because with the LED triggers on the stack, you can sacrifice. No, it's the other way around. With the Razaketh triggers on the stack, you can sacrifice the LED to make mana for whatever card you're going to get.
Yep.
So that way you don't lose out on the negative sides, and it's just like a Black Lotus.
Yep. Yeah. Normally you're sacrificing mana dorks, so you're already just playing creatures that you already want to play, using things like the Lion's Eye Diamond with either Eternal Witness or Luris to make a little bit extra mana go that way. One of the lines I really like is finding Thassa's Oracle, casting the Thassa's Oracle with the trigger on the stack, sacrificing the Thassa's Oracle to go find the Demonic Consultation and win that way. There's a lot of different ways to get the Razaketh into play by somehow getting into your yard with either an Entomb or discarding it with Faithless Looting or something like that, and then reanimating it with any reanimation spell. There's a couple different ways to set this one up. So it's a little bit different than some of our other options because it's not like it's just one card. I mean, it's one card, but it's an 8 mana creature that you're not really just casting it. You're reanimating it or something.
Yeah, so I think that kind of makes like Animate Dead like the one card win con. So if we're looking into that, well, that's a 2 mana one card win con. Right. You can kind of look at it that way. So I don't even know where we would categorize Razaketh in terms of mana cost then, because like this is the easiest one to cheat out in terms of that.
Yeah, it's tricky. I don't think you can evaluate it off the board like just like straight across like that. I think the best part about Razaketh is what even is the best card? I don't know.
I think that there are here's the problem with Razaketh is that you're opened up to everything. You need to have a bunch of creatures in play already. If there's a Dauthi Voidwalker, you can't do anything. If there's opposition agents, you can't do anything.
If there's something that's stopping activated abilities, you can't do anything.
Curse totems, creatures, right?
It folds to a lot.
It folds to a lot, and it's very all in.
Yeah.
When you're casting cards like Life, and you're using
sacrificing
your lands
to sacrifice to Razaketh.
If you get interrupted at any point, it's very difficult to come back from. So I'm going to have Razaketh a little bit lower.
Yeah, I also think it's a little bit lower. It can be explosive, and I do love the play style. I love the card. It's a cool design, but I think you're right. Because it has a lot of holes that can be poked into it. I kind of view it similarly to where I view polymorph effects and that combo.
Yeah.
I think it's right around that power level.
And I would actually put polymorphs above Razaketh in general, just because polymorph is a little bit more resilient. There are many polymorphs you can play in your deck in any combination of colors that you're playing polymorphs in. Whereas if you're interacted and someone stabs you in the middle of your Razaketh combo, you're blown out. You can't do anything else after that. So
yeah, I would say, and also because this one's just a little bit different than the other ones, it's just like it as a 1-card combo, it's just not. It's not a 1-card combo. You need other shit.
Creature,
you know what I mean?
So
for that, I think we should rate it
It's
lower.
one card that like your deck is built around, so like you're able to do stuff with it, but like
you really only need one other creature. Sacrifice one creature to find Thassa's Oracle, cast Thassa's Oracle, sacrifice the Oracle to find Demonic Consultation, but that's still 8 mana for the Razaketh, and then blue, black. So that's like still 11 mana, which is kind of like Imperial Recruiter was what we're talking about that. So
but I'm going to put this above the Recruiters though, because you can cheat it out.
You can cheat on that so easily by reanimating it.
You know what? You can reanimate a Imperial Recruiter though.
Yeah, but that doesn't save you on any mana.
Moving on. Intuition.
Yes.
I saved some big punches for the end.
I see that. Yes, we were finally talking about probably the best.
One of the best ones.
Yeah. Best. All right,
I changed it up from the past couple times, and maybe this will be more enjoyable.
Talk about this line.
So Intuition. So one of the more well-known Intuition setups is you can. Let's talk about what Intuition does.
That's a great idea. I love that.
So this is 2 and a blue for an instant that lets you tutor 3 different cards from your deck, and your opponents choose one of them, and then you keep that card and the other ones go in your bin. What this card was supposed to do was, in Constructed, get you the card that you wanted, because you could go get 3 copies of it.
Yeah.
But we have to kind of play around with it a little bit differently in cEDH.
I don't think you could get 3.
Yes, you can. Yeah. So like you could go get like 3 time spirals, and they have to give you a time spiral.
Are you sure it doesn't say with different names?
I'm pretty sure.
Am I thinking of what? Am I thinking of the? I think you might be right. I just want to make sure.
Search your library for 3 cards and reveal them.
Okay,
so you could reveal 3 time
I
walks.
think I'm thinking of Gifts Ungiven. Is Gifts?
That's Gifts Ungiven does make you get cards with different names.
That's what I'm thinking. Sorry about that. Back in it. Okay.
But what we have to do with intuition is completely different.
Right.
We have to set it up so that way, no matter what card we're given, we can win the game off of. And getting the pile of Lion's Eye Diamond, Underworld Breach, and Savine's Reclamation guarantees that we can get an Underworld Breach into play then.
Yep. The issue with this is, depending on which card you're given, you'll need to either discard your hand, you'll need to have a bunch of cards in your graveyard. I think like 9 cards is what you need.
This is similar to the Spellseeker line. You also need a little bit of a setup.
Yes. The pros is a 3 mana to set up, 3 mana to cast the Intuition, and then after that, at maximum you need 5 mana, or not even that. I think at maximum you really need, max. I guess you would need 5 mana.
Yeah, in order to, because if they gave you Underworld Breach,
right.
Well, first of all, hooray!
Right.
But second of all, like flashing back Savine's Reclamation is really what you would have to do. And even then, if they gave you LED helps you flash back Savine's Reclamation. Right. This also helps you fuel your graveyard more just by getting your whole graveyard.
Your whole hand into your graveyard.
Thank you. Yep. And then that will help you with your Underworld Breach. Plus, this also goes and gets you any of the other combo pieces that you need to actually finish the game after Breach is in play. You can just go get your Brain Freeze and, I don't know, maybe anything else you might need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why it's so important. Once you get the Underworld Breach in play, you can use it again from your graveyard with the Breach to go find the rest of the combo. This line's great. I think it's one of the main reasons why Blue Farm is as powerful as it is. It's one of the main strategies to playing Grixis plus white cards because you get Savine's Reclamation, so your Intuition line is really nice in case Ad Nauseam sucks the hell out of your life total and you're at too low life total. You can't do that anymore. You can just win with Intuition. Late game, it's really powerful. Early game, a little bit less so, but I think one of the strengths in this card is you can also use it to be really helpful for you. If an opponent's going for a win, you cast Intuition, target a different opponent, and you give them a pile of
3 free counters.
Yeah, or you give them Savine's Reclamation, Underworld Breach, and a counterspell, and you say, I have to stop this other player from winning the game, give me the counterspell, and then you put Underworld Breach and Savine's Reclamation in your graveyard, and then on your turn you can win the game.
I forget about doing that a lot.
It is powerful strategy. You should do it all the time. It is like the card is very strong. It can be very flexible. It's similar to Doomsday in that the options are limitless, but it's better than Doomsday because you don't get blown out as easily. It can help you just interact. It can help you grind. If you really want to find, Rhystic Study, Mystic Remora, Esper Sentinel, you can do that too. The card is just flexible all over, and I think I would put it very high on the list, if not the highest.
It's the top.
Yeah,
it's definitely above Hermit Druid, which is what we have at the top.
Definitely.
Yeah, like the flexibility of being able to get just like any other things that you might want and just use it as an actual tutor in your deck too is super nice. This is clearly the best thing that we've talked about.
Definitely,
hands down.
It being a 3 mana instant is great. You cast it off Mana Crypt and a land.
Enough said, right?
Yeah. The only downside is you have to have cards in your graveyard, either 6 or 9. I can never remember, so I feel like I get this math wrong a decent amount of times. But it depends on what they give you. You have to have a couple cards in your graveyard. But besides that, combo's great.
The next one is, let's talk about this one first. Peer into the Abyss.
Sure. So are we putting Peer into the Abyss in the same category of all the other black spells, of just like black spell that with a lot of life can draw you a whole bunch of your library? Because in my head, that's where I put them. I put,
for me personally, these are the same because they're all 3 of them. They're all 3 different power levels in my mind.
Right, so for me, there's 4. I put Ad Nauseam, Peer into the Abyss, Bolus's Citadel, and Necropotence all in the same category. This is all the same card to me. They are just different versions of it.
Well, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
Ad Nauseam
I forgot Bolus's Citadel.
So Ad Nauseam is the best one. Peer into the Abyss is the second best one. Bolus's Citadel is the next best one, and Necropotence is the last best one.
I think all of these line up differently in the top 10 versus
one at a time.
One at a time, right? Because they all,
that's true.
I understand for like
They do the same thing.
They do the same thing.
Specifically, Peer and Ad Nauseam. They draw you a big chunk right to your hand right away.
Yeah, Necro does the same thing, but Necro requires you to use them on your next turn.
Or cast a Final Fortune to use them right away, or use Shimmerzer to use them right away, or something like that.
You have to be tricky. But Bolus of Citadel can just be stopped if you find too many lands and don't have enough weight.
Too many times I've done that. Cast Bolus of Citadel. Oh, there's a land. Oh, there's a second land past my turn. I've done that too many times. I love the card in Casual. I have not liked it in CDH, and it makes me furious.
Infuriating,
because
right?
I love the card.
I don't want to put this in the same category as the other ones because it is frustrating and it can really hurt that way too.
But these take up a bunch of slots in the top 10 if we do spread them out like that. Like for me, can we talk about them all at the same time right now? Like
let's talk about them all at the same time.
For me, Ad Nauseam is the number one. It's the best card. It's the best setup card in the format. The reason why Ad Nauseam is so strong, instant speed. That's very powerful over all these other black spells.
Yeah.
It draws you a bunch of cards into your hand. Not draws, it puts them into your hand, so it doesn't be stopped by Notion Thief or stuff like that. It allows you to control how deep you go, and most importantly, not only does it just find you the win condition, but it helps you protect the win condition.
Yes.
Those other cards we were talking about earlier, Shared Summons and whatever the final something black card.
Final Parting. Those two cards only find you the combo, but that's not good enough because we need to find a way to protect the combo. This is why all of these are like that. Like Spellseeker doesn't do it. Polymorphs don't do it. Razaketh doesn't do it.
They just find the combo. Why Ad Nauseam is strong is it finds you protection from the combo. So if you can sneak in the Ad Nauseam using somebody else's Deafening Silence to make sure that they can't counter your spell or something like that, you can draw the whole bunch of cards, and then after you have the cards, then you can set up the win. And even if your opponents will find interaction by the time that you can set up the win, you have 30 cards in your hand so you can protect it. That's one of the reasons why I really love Ad Nauseam in Grixis or blue with blue. Yeah. But when I've played it without blue, I really do think it's much weaker. Like as a combo, without the counter spells, without the backup, it's just a much weaker card. The
you
blue
can go
spells
a lot
you play with it
faster,
are so good.
But you are less resilient that way.
Yeah, any deck can win on turn one if you donate your whole deck to it. But Ad Nauseam is strong because you can win through you can protect it.
But you can see why I don't want to put all of these four cards in the number one spot.
Right, because
Bolus, Citadel, and Necro certainly don't deserve to be in the number one spot.
Certainly not. Yeah, I would say Peer into the Abyss is worse than Intuition. I would say it's probably on par with Hermit Druid and Doomsday.
It's above Hermit Druid and Doomsday.
Okay.
Because you can win the game immediately.
It is Peer into the Abyss is a whole different strange breed. I have gone back and forth on whether or not I like it in Ad Nauseam decks. Right now, I'm not playing it in my Ad Nauseam deck. There have been times in the past where I exclusively played it with Ad Nauseam. I love it because even when you're at a low life total, you can still win the game.
See, that's why I'm playing it in my Ad Nauseam decks is because you know you're going to get beat down.
Right.
And when you just need 2 more mana, which can be very not too hard to get to, like your deck is still built around main phasing these Ad Nauseams to be able to win the game. And if you're trying to main phase an Ad Nauseam, Peer into the Abyss is also going to get you there. And sometimes it's going to be easier to get you there because you can get more cards off of it than you can off Ad Nauseam.
Definitely.
Half the time.
Most of the time, Pure is going to draw you like 40, 45 cards. Ad Nauseam is more going to drive 25, 30 cards, sometimes 35. Pure, I've never lost off of a Pure, I don't think, and I've whiffed off Ad Nauseam plenty.
I lost off a Pure once, and I think it's only because I was interacted with at some point then. But I was in Abdel Adrian, so
what are you going to do?
Non-blue, right?
Right, but the card's strong, but it being a 7-mana sorcery, a 5-mana instant is just that much better. Even if it does draw you as many cards, even if it doesn't require the life total investment, that instant speed specifically and the 5-mana is just a huge difference.
Yeah. All right. So our top right now is Ad Nauseam, then Intuition, then Peer into the Abyss, then Hermit Druid.
That sounds right.
I'm sticking with that. I think that even though Hermit Druid can be much faster, it blows you out when you're ruined.
Doomsday's after that.
Necro and Bolus of Citadel are the other 2 mass black draw spells that we need to talk about and place somewhere in here. So I have Necro above Bolus of Citadel, definitely.
Definitely.
Where do you have Necro? it's the same mana cost as Doomsday. So between like Hermit Druid and Doomsday, where do you think
it's interesting. I normally consider Necro more as closer to a Rhystic Study. I think oftentimes I'm truly comfortable.
So maybe we shouldn't include Necro in this list then.
I don't know, because the second part of what I'm going to say is there are times when it's correct to just Necro for 35 and hope to find Final Fortune. If you're not playing Final Fortune or you're not playing a way to use that win right away, I think this card is much closer to something like a Rhystic Study. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to draw like 15 cards right away and then draw another 15 cards or something like that. But in the decks that can abuse it, it's much better than that. I think it's worse than Doomsday, but maybe better than Spellseeker. What else
Worse
is in
than
between
Doomsday? It's Doomsday Spellseeker.
I think I would put it there, and then I would put Bolas' Citadel probably below Spellseeker. What's next? Polymorph? I think it's worse than Polymorph.
You think it? All right, so that means that Bolas' Citadel is also worse than Divining Witch.
Yes, I that's like, is that a hot take? Bolas' Citadel worse than Divining Witch. I love Citadel in Casual, but in CDH I have never been impressed, so I will say yes.
Is Bolas' Citadel better than Razaketh? Bolas' Citadel is worse than...
That's too hard. They're like the same. I would say it's worse than Raz.
I have it worse than Raz.
Yeah, but barely.
I'm putting it worse than Raz, even though it is cheaper. It can get stopped by itself.
Yeah. Raz can't get stopped by itself.
It's better than the Recruiters because I'm building around Bolas' Citadel, and some of like those Bolas' Citadels play like 25 lands or something like that.
Yeah, really low.
Yeah, really low. But period. That's where I'm going to put that. Okay. So that means that we have one more to talk about then.
Oh, wait, let me try to guess what it is, because
Oh my God, dude. I saved like your favorite for last.
My favorite?
Yeah, that's one of your favorites.
Birthing Pod.
Yeah,
it's Birthing Pod.
It's Birthing Pod.
Yeah.
So these three cards I'm willing to put together. Between Birthing Pod, Vivian on the Hunt, and Survival of the Fittest, they all do the same thing.
Yep.
And they all, I think, can be placed together as opposed to the mass black draw spells that have such varieties in power.
Yeah.
These Birthing Pod and Vivian on the Hunt are both 2 green and 4 colorless. Birthing Pod, you get to use the life, but it's the same amount of mana, and they would require a 3 CMC creature.
Normally that's your commander, Timna, or something like that.
Survival of the Fittest is a little bit cheaper on the front side of things, but you do still have to cast like a Karmic Guide afterwards.
Karmic Guide, yeah.
Yeah, so it is more expensive and a little bit more color intensive for that reason.
Basically, you find Felidar Guardian, you flicker something, you find Kiki Jiki, you tap, flicker something again, you find Karmic Guide, you bring stuff back. You're ending on Kiki Jiki and Felidar Guardian. Each one of these lines are a little bit differently. Should we talk about exactly what it is? I'll do it. I don't mind.
Yeah, do it.
You have a 3-mana creature in play. You cast Birthing Pod for 3 mana and the Phyrexian. You cast 1 mana and the extra Phyrexian, so you're up to 4 life total. To activate Birthing Pod, sacrifice the 3-drop. You find Felidar Guardian, the Felidar Guardian ETB, and you flicker the Birthing Pod. You activate Birthing Pod again using 2 more Phyrexian and 1 mana to sacrifice the Felidar Guardian to fight Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide comes in, you flicker, Karmic Guide comes in, you ETB Felidar Guardian. Felidar Guardian comes in, and you flicker the Birthing Pod, activate Birthing Pod again to sacrifice the Felidar Guardian to find Kiki Jiki, tap the Kiki Jiki to make a copy of Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide brings back the Felidar Guardian. The Felidar Guardian flickers the Kiki Jiki so that you can tap the Kiki Jiki again to make a copy of the Felidar Guardian.
Nicely done.
Thank you very much. The Vivian line is the exact same thing, so I'm not going to say it again. You just instead of the 3 mana and then 1 mana and then 1 mana and then 1 mana, you just cast all 6 mana, sacrifice the 3-drop to find the Felidar Guardian, and go from there. The Survival of the Fittest is similar. You find these lines, except at one point you have to cast the Karmic Guide to bring back the Kiki Jiki, tap the Kiki Jiki, make a copy of the Karmic Guide, and brings back the Felidar Guardian.
And you do need any creature in hand to initially start the process of survivaling through to get Kiki Jiki and Felidar into your graveyard.
I love this line because it requires casting 1 spell, so it's good with your own rule of laws, it's good against your opponent's rule of laws. I don't like this combo because it folds to artifact hate and creature hate. So,
and graveyard hate.
And graveyard hate. Basically, all the hates, all the stuff.
You name a hate, and it falls to it, except for rule of law.
And Dranith Magistrate.
the magistrate.
The big ones, it avoids those, which is pretty nice. It's very efficient. I think 6 mana is one of the cheaper of all the lines that we've talked about. 6 mana is kind of the threshold, is like how much I want to pay for my 1 mana win conditions. I think a lot of the time, the bad card parts is that you have to play bad cards like Karmic Guide and Kiki-G Felidar Guardian that don't do anything on their own most of the time.
And if you draw them, it's very awkward.
Your combo line shuts off if you draw any of these cards, which is a downside. It doesn't come up a ton. There are ways to get around it. You can still cast them and then do the rest of the combo without it and make it work. But that is kind of a bummer. This line is certainly worse than Ad Nauseam. It's certainly worse than Intuition, just like in a vacuum. But I think it's better than Hermit Druid, and it's better than...
Do you think it's better than Peer into the Abyss? Because I think it's better than Hermit Druid, but I think it's worse than Peer into the Abyss.
Worse than Peer into the Abyss. It's less mana than Peer into the Abyss.
By one.
By one,
unless you're doing life, but...
Yeah,
But Peer into the Abyss doesn't require anything else to be in play.
Just a bunch more, just mana.
Just more mana.
Yeah, just one more mana versus the 3-drop. So technically the Birthing Pod, you need the 3 drops, so that's 9 mana. I will concede to you, Peer into the Abyss is better.
Okay,
but I still think Birthing Pod is better than Hermit Druid.
Oh, yes. No, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
All right, so our top 10 is officially Polymorphs at number 10. Number 9 is Divining Witch. Number 8 is Spellseeker. 7 is Necropotence. 6 is Doomsday. 5 is Hermit Druid. 4 is Birthing Pod, Vivian, and Survival of the Fittest. Number 3 is Peer into the Abyss. Number 2 is Intuition. And our number 1 card win con is Ad Nauseam. I think we did a great job.
Yeah.
I think this is just a correct list.
I think it's pretty accurate.
Looking at this and I'm like, I don't think anyone can dispute this because...
I think Peer into the Abyss is the only disputable one. I think certain people are hot or very cold on that card, but I'm still comfortable with where I put it, I think.
I'm high on Peer into the Abyss because it only wins me the game, and... deflecting SWAT is going to interact with you no matter what, right?
Yeah,
so
back up your Peer into the Abyss.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think our list is pretty great. Ad Nauseam is incredible. Intuition's incredible. Peer into the Abyss, incredible. Birthing Pod, incredible. And the rest of them are great.
Wow, we actually talked about a lot of... There was 6 of them that didn't make it onto the list.
Oh, we didn't even talk about this. Oh, there's 6 more that we were going to talk about.
No, 6 more that we didn't. 6 more.
Oh, what was the honorable mentions?
Razaketh.
Okay.
Bolus of Citadel.
Yep.
The Recruiters.
Yep.
Shared Summonings.
Yep.
Defense of the Heart.
Yep.
Divergent Transformation.
Okay.
And Final Parting.
Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah, I think that feels right, too.
At a certain point, I would have said you're crazy to not have Razaketh near the top. But I think at this point in our life,
I think 2 or 3 years ago, we would have been crazy to not have Razaketh up towards the top.
But yeah, I don't know why. It's just, I don't know. It leaves you too vulnerable.
It's too vulnerable. Yeah. Like all these other things just leave you in much better
Everyone
positions.
knows what you're doing. You know, they know when to fuck with you. They know, okay, great. You sacked all your creatures and all your lands and you just got your hands on lands at diamond.
Yeah.
Excellent. I will cast Silence.
And why do we hate World Gorger Dragon?
Yeah, exactly. Same thing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching or listening. If you want to support us directly, you can do that on Patreon like our $100 patrons.
Baby G-Bus and Demon of Rosgrees.
If you want to pick up any merch, you can do that at our merch store on playtowinmtg.com.
Thank you so much to Dragonshield for supporting the show. Make sure you go check out some of their new cool sleeves, like the Pan-Dragon sleeves at their affiliate link, our affiliate link with them down below.
Thank you so much for watching.
We will see you on Sunday for a game. AJ Al-Sawai. Oh my God, how did you say that? Al-Wasaibi.
Jake Tofield.
Stashes.
Mitchell Shepard.
Justin.
Eli Ritchie.
Man Solo.
Kola Marikovic.
Steven Schlichty.
Big TP 15.
That Green Guy.
Plantain Jackson.
Isaiah Berlisky.
Michael Lyon.
Pedro.
Meadow Plays Games.
Wind Wave.
C.
Kuwaja A. Hamid.
Jacob Depp.
CZ.
Michael Blue.
And Wildfang.
Sleepy Jarvis.
Thomas Bueno.
Swampy McGee.
Warren Connell.
David Nelson.
Jormags.
James Noon. 845. This video was brought to you in part. This podcast.
Yes.
Last one, I swear. We got it. We're good. The is what I said.
The pen.